Hi, my name is Ernest, and I have Chapter 11 on informative and persuasive speaking. Specifically, I'm going to talk about fallacies of reasoning, focusing on slippery slope and hasty generalizations. As the text states, fallacies are flaws within the logic or reasoning of an argument. A slippery slope fallacy occurs when a person argues that one action will inevitably lead to a series of other actions. Hasty generalizations occur when too few examples are cited to warrant a conclusion. So you're jumping the gun on what you assume to be the reality of the situation. Alright. The example that I will use to illustrate the importance of understanding the slippery slope fallacy comes from my experience as a San Antonio Spurs fan. So, to put it in a frame of reference, the setting is this year's Western Conference Finals, when Kawhi Leonard was injured in the third quarter of the first game. The Spurs were up 23 points at that point, and Kawhi had like 26 points, and he was carrying the team toward what was going to be a victory. Then he got injured, then he was out, then the Spurs collapsed, and then, we know what happened from there. A lot of fans I've heard on the Spurs side say that had we won that game, or had Kawhi not been injured and we won that game, then we would have been in better position to take game 2 off of the victory. And it's conjecture, basically. It's assuming that one thing would lead to another, and, it is a fallacy to assume that way, even though I'm being a hopeful Spurs fan. For hasty generalizations, it's still going to be in the Spurs reference. A few years ago, the Spurs were often labeled as an old team, or even just last year or the year before that. Specifically because Manu Ginobili, one of their veterans, 39, Tony Parker, also 30s, they're just kind of, they like to sign veteran players, but in reality over half the team was, a young, it was young players, and people were just going off of the, media, saying that, oh, the Spurs are old, and it's just repeated, and you don't actually take in all of the context and all the information. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it's not looking into the whole picture. It's just kind of going off of like a small sample size. Now that I've made inferences, I'll discuss how these inferences can be transferred to other situations. Hasty generalizations and first impressions, I think, go hand in hand. Sometimes you'll get a weird vibe of someone, and that's not necessarily indicative of what kind of character they are. Maybe they're having an off day, maybe they have something on their mind and it's a psychological noise, and they're just not all there, and so you can't really go off of that. For slippery slope, people try to think this out. I'll put slippery slope with anxiety, in that people with anxiety but they think of this, if this happens, then oh no, that's going to snowball into that, and then this is going to happen, and they let that dictate their mind frame. And it's obviously not the case with slippery slope. You have to know that everything is contextual and in its place, and you just, take it that way. So the lessons I've learned from those experiences are, don't judge a book by its cover, pretty much. And with anxiety, or with slippery slope, just before you start thinking of what if, just don't. Just know what you can deal with and then move on. In conclusion, it pays to be mindful of avoiding fallacies in friendly debates or arguments. Whether you're trying to settle conflict or refrain from burning bridges, you're better equipped to come out the winner if your logic is sound. So in summary, think before persuading, consider all factors.